Professor Dr. N. Ganesh is working as a senior faculty, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, SRM University, City Campus, Vadapalani, Chennai. He has more than 12 years of undergraduate and postgraduate teaching experience, which includes 5 years of research experience. He has trained many corporate batches on technologies such as mainframes, Application Systems 400, SAP, ABAP. He has published 10 articles in both international and national journals. He has presented several papers in both national and international conferences. He has written 4 books which are prescribed in Anna University affiliated colleges, SRM University and Bharat University. His research interests are software engineering, data mining and cloud computing.
Welcome to UGC lecture series in computer science. We are going to see a series of lectures in the subject operating systems. This subject is for the students studying in their 5th semester of their BSc degree program. The subject operating system belongs to paper number 8. In today's lecture, we are going to see few topics from Unit 4. In Unit 4, there are several topics, out of which we are going to see topics on the directory structure and how the disks are being stored in the directory structure. So, the contents of the day are disk structure, organizing files in the directory, file sharing and about the file protection, how the files have been protected. Now, what is a disk structure? Disk is, you might be knowing about a primary disk and a secondary disk. A primary disk is where something like the RAM. A RAM is said to be a primary disk. RAM is random access memory, which is a main memory, which is a volatile memory. A secondary disk is an hard disk or any of the removable drives, something like even your USB. So, let us consider hard disk as a secondary disk. So, in this secondary disk, how the directories are being created, how the files are being stored in the directories, how the disk is being created. I suppose you would have worked with an operating system, you would have worked with computer. When you switch on your computer, after it logs in, you will be getting, you could find the C drive, D drive, E drive and so on. So, how the C drive and D drive and E drive are being partitioned, how the disks are being segregated and how the directories have been formed or how the folders have been formed and how the files get stored inside these folders or in these directories. So, that is what we are going to see now. So, that is what is said to be a disk structure. So, this disk structure is of different groups. So, we will be having a disk structure called as a raw disk structure. A raw disk partition is one which does not have any sort of file system, or we as well have a formatted disk partition with a file system. So, when you could see this C drive, D drive and E drive, when you right click it, when you go to the properties, when you could see it, you can see two different file systems when you use Windows operating system. The file system such as FAT file system, other one is NTFS file system. FAT is file allocation table which will be of 16 or 32 bits. So, FAT is file allocation table, the other one is NTFS. NTFS is new technology file system. So, in these two file system only all your disk will get partition. In order to get partition and in order to have this as a disk structure, we use a RAID concept. The RAID is available inside the operating system. A RAID is nothing but redundant array of independent disk. So, this helps for partition and it helps to protect the disk against any sort of failures. This partition is as well called as a mini disk, or it is also called as the slices of the entire disk. Say for example, you have a hard disk of 500 GB worth, let us consider. So now you are going to create C drive, D drive, E drive. So when you have allocated 200 GB of space in C drive and 150 GB in D drive, the remaining spaces, because the hard disk is said to be a 500 GB, so the remaining spaces you can allocate it to E drive. So allocating this is what is called as a mini disk. So C drive will act as a separate disk, but it is part of the entire hard disk, and D drive will act as a separate disk, but it is part of an entire hard disk. So this is called as a mini disk, or it is also called as slicing the entire hard disk. That is what is a disk structure is. So and each and every structure, each and every mini disk or its slices has its own volume. Volume in the sense 200 GB is being allocated to C drive, 150 GB is being allocated to D drive. So this GB size, which we store it as a volume, and that volume has its own referral name, and it gets stored in a file internally called as a VTOC file. VTOC is volume table of contents. So that gets stored within the operating system. So now each volume contains file system, and it also tracks that file system info in device directory or volume table of contents, which is also called as a VTOC. As well, we have the file system as, the file system is classified into two groups. One is called as a general purpose file system, other one is called as a special purpose file system. So, but all these general purpose and special purpose have been put within the same operating system or the computer. So when you work now, from now on when you are going to work, you will be knowing the difference between what a C drive, what a D drive and what a E drive, how it gets partitioned, how it gets allocated in the disk. So now let us see a typical file system, how it gets organized in the disk. So let us see with a diagram, with a figure. So here this is said to be a directory. In the directory you have set of files. So this is said to be partition A. Partition A is said to be C drive. This is said to be a directory in which you have the different files. This is said to be partition B, which is of D drive, let us consider. All these things belongs to a single disk. All these things belongs to one particular hard disk. So now the second figure, the second part in this same figure shows that there is a directory and you have n number of files which get stored in two different disks. That is, if you are going to have a master drive and a slave drive, two different hard drives, and we are going to store it out. So how it gets stored? So this is a typical file system organization. So next is we will see the different sets of operations that has been performed in a directory. So now we will be seeing the directory. In our earlier lectures, we have seen about the file operation and file handling. In this lecture, we are going to see about the directory and how files get stored inside this directory and how it gets organized in the directory. So now let us see the different operations that has been performed in the directory. So the first operation is we are going to search for a file. So in a directory there may be different files. So if there is a file, how it could get searched out. Second is creating a file. If it does not exist, creating a file, deleting a file, listing a directory. I suppose you would have inferred by viewing the files. So you would have seen when you right click it, view based on thumbnails, based on large icons, based on small icons, based on the details. When you give details, everything will be listed, even its size will be listed, even the date created, date modified, time created, time modified will be listed. So listing out is also one of the operation in a directory structure. Then the next one is renaming a file. Then the last one is traversing the file system. What do you mean by traversing a file system? Converting the file system from one format to the other format. Something like from FAT system to NTFS system, from NTFS system to FAT system. So then we will be seeing how the directory is being organized into. So the directory is organized in means of efficiency and naming. So let us see over here. It has one as efficiency. Efficiency is locating the file very quickly. Then naming. Naming is which is convenient to users. Then grouping. And then when we are going to see efficiency, locating the file quickly. So when you are going to store, if it will be, we can track or trace the file if it is being stored inside a C drive or inside a D drive. Supposing, let us consider D drive is pretty empty and you do not have any contents inside D drive. So when you store the contents, so when you are going to store it outside itself, we can easily track it out, easily detect, identify. And supposing we are going to create a folder by name A, and when you are going to store the file X, then you need to click on A drive, A directory, and then inside A folder you will be having the file name X. So even this takes quite amount of time when compared to keeping the file X on the D drive directly. That is called as efficiency. Then we need to name a file. Anything and everything, if I want to search and retrieve the contents, I need to have a name. Even if I want to call a candidate, call a person who is in a group, if I know his name, I can call him directly rather than saying with rather than calling him with other names like hello, hi, come here. If calling in that sort will not be efficient, and then if you are going to have your names, it will be better. So always the file naming is required in order to call the specific file. And then that is one other file directory handling, organizing. Then groupism. So logical grouping of files by properties. That is, your programming language files will be grouped at one sector. Your gaming files will be grouped at a different sector. Movie files will be grouped in a different sector. Music files will be grouped in a different sector. Other contents will be grouped in a different sector. So grouping it, arranging the file content is as well and organizing the directory. So now let us see as a different levels of directory structures. One is called a single level directory. So what is a single level directory? Let us see with a figure. So a single level directory is for all users, wherein these are said to be the directories. You have CAT, BO, A, test, data, mail, CONT, hex, records. All these are said to be directories. So these are the files that are linked to this directory. So here, when you have a single level directory, you have a naming problem and a grouping problem. Because you are going to have only one directory. Directory is considered as only one folder. So inside a single folder, two files cannot have the same names. If it is going to have the same name, a duplicate entry will occur and it will ask you to, it will prompt you to change the file name. And then two files cannot be it cannot be grouped because it is there inside a single folder. All the contents are there inside a single folder. So all the files has to be stored only separately. So the two problems that may arise from a single level directory is, one is naming problem, second one is a grouping problem. So now let us see a two level directory. In a two level directory, you have a master file directory and a user file directory. And inside the user file directory, you have your set of files. Consider there is a directory wherein you are going to have a question bank. A question bank is said to be a directory. Inside the question bank, if you are going to have one other folder by name questions, and if you are going to have other folder by name answers, when you are going to click the question folder, then inside the question folder only you will be having set of files which contains all the questions. Inside the answer folder, you have only answers. So similarly, this diagram, this figure shows an example of a two level directory. There is a master file directory and a user file directory. Inside the user file directory, many different files have been stored, which has the path name and the same name or different names that can be same names can be kept on 2 different folders. So this has an efficient searching and no grouping capability. We will see more about the directory levels of directory after the break. Welcome back after the break. So we were discussing about the different levels of directory. We saw about the single level directory and about 2 level directory before the break. So I gave you, we were even seeing about the problems that may occur because of a single level directory. One is naming convention, naming problem, other one is grouping. So you cannot group the files, you cannot give equal names, same names to 2 different files. That can be overcome with a 2 level directory. In the 2 level directory, I gave you an example with the question bank, wherein questions get stored in a separate question folder and answers get stored in a separate answer folder. So in the question folder, inside it, say for example, you are going to have the question for a subject called operating system. You can make create a file with a name called operating system, and in the answer folder, you can create the file. Even there you can have a name called operating system, and this does not conflict each other. Even though these 2 folders belongs to a bigger directory called as question bank, this operating system naming will not conflict, because this operating system file has been placed under a question folder. The other operating system file has been placed under answer folder. So that is the advantage of using a 2 level directory. So the other advantages are, we have a path name, we have an efficient searching, we have same file name for different users, and there is no grouping capability. So the next one is about a tree structured directory. So let us see a tree structured directory. What do you mean by tree structured directory? Having multiple directory levels, having multiple folders, and then grouping them or organizing the folders accordingly, and having files at one particular location inside of one particular folder. So let us see a diagrammatic representation of a tree structure directory. So here it is. Here we have a root tree, and under root we have n number of directories. Under the first directory we can have second directory, or we can even have files under this directory. So under second directory, this can have 3 or 4 different directories, and this can also have files. So this is a representation of a, similarly over here. So this is a representation of a tree structured directories. Now what is the advantage of using a tree structured directory? When we use a tree structured directory, the searching level is so efficient. That is, if I am going to say that I need to search for an operating system question paper. So I am sitting in the office, wherein I am been given an access to the computer. In the computer, I have a directory by name programs. Under programs, there are 2 different directory. I need my searches to get an operating system for BTech degree program or for BSc degree program. So I have a directory by name programs. Under programs, there are 2 different directories. One is BSc, other directory is MSc. Under BSc, I have, when I open that folder, I have a different set of directories as first semester, second semester, third semester, fourth semester, fifth semester. And under MSc, I have in a similar way. So under these things, if I pretty well know that operating system belongs to fifth semester, I will directly go to the fifth semester folder and click on that. Under fifth semester, I have different subjects, operating system and other subjects. So since my aim is to get the question paper operating system, if I click the operating system folder, I will be getting the questions. So I will be having set of files inside it as question papers. So I can very well take out the operating system question paper. So this is how it goes. So this is called as a tree level directory structure. So because of this, the searching level increases, efficient searching, and we can group things accordingly. and the current directory can be identified easily. Current directory is nothing but a working directory, and the command given over here is a Unix programming. So this is the command that is used to retrieve the contents from a Unix operating system. Then we will see what is a file sharing, how the files are being shared from one directory to the other. So when we are going to search a file for a single user or for a multiple user, then how it gets shared. File sharing is, from the name it denotes, two users can share a single file. So it has to be placed in a particular location wherein two different users can gain access to the file. I suppose when you are working with Windows operating system, you would have seen when you are switching it on, before logging on, there will be n number of users as staff user, administrator, guest, student, and all your names. So each and every one will be having a different username. So when you click on to your user as guest or to your name, then you have a different working environment, you have a different wallpaper, and the administrator will have a different wallpaper, and the guest will have a different wallpaper. So likewise, it gets segregated even when we are logging in itself. So if I want to share a file, as far as the desktop wallpaper is concerned, it may be different, but the contents available in D drive or in E drive will be shared by both the people. For people who is working in with username, person who is working with the guest name can share the contents. If it is our same system, this is the case. If it is our remote machine, the contents has been put on a server, then a person from user 1 can share the content A, and even the person with user 2 can share, who is working in a different system, can share the same content that has been located in the server. So this is what a file sharing is. A file sharing can be done through a protection scheme. On distributed system, files may be shared across a network. Across a network in the sense, it can be put under a server and then you can share it across. Then network file system is a common distributed file sharing method. It is called as an NFS. Then this file sharing, if you are going to have if you are going to have multiple users, then you require a user ID and a group ID. For computer 1, I am the user X. For computer 2, the user is said to be Y. So here there is a computer name, there is a user name, and there is a group name X, and there is a computer name, say for example B, and a user name is Y. So they are going to share a file called C. So this is how a multiple user work with. Then we will see if it is of a remote file sharing, how it works out. Remote file sharing will be working on a basis of an FTP basis. What is FTP? FTP is file transfer protocol. So on a file transfer protocol, the files can be tracked and it can be transferred from the server and it can be copied to the individual users machine. That is called as FTP, which is being done on a remote sharing basis. Then next one is we will see the file sharing on a remote file system. So this is a client server model. Server can serve multiple clients, and clients and user on client identification is insecure or complicated. So NFS is a network file system, is a Unix file system. It is a standard Unix client server file sharing protocol, and CIFS is a standard Windows protocol. So standard operating system file calls are translated into remote calls. And then distributed file system can be used via active directories or via using naming services, certain naming services. If there are certain modes for failures even. When you are going to share a file, there is a possibility that it may get failed out, because a file may be available, two users have been given access, and if both the users have been given full control, then supposing the user 1 is going to delete a file, when the user 2 wants to share that file, want to use that file may not be available. And supposing if the user 1 has made some manipulations and if he has corrupted the file, the user 2 will not be in a position, who is using it in a different computer, will not be in a position to use the same set of file. So that is one of the failure mode cause. The other modes are, it is recovery from failure can involve state information about the status of each remote request. So stateless protocols such as NFS, network file system, include all information in each request, allowing easy recovery but with lesser security aspects. So then let us see about a consistency semantics. Consistency semantics specify how multiple users are to access a shared file simultaneously. At the same instance of time, 2 or more number of users when they are going to access the same set of file. Then how it works, that is called as a consistency semantics. So let us see the different file systems which use this consistency semantics. You would have heard of a file system called as an AFS file system. AFS denotes Andrew file system. So Andrew file system is implemented in a complex remote file sharing semantics. And then when you use a Unix operating system, you have a file system called as a UFS, which is nothing but Unix file system. And this AFS has session semantics. It writes only visible to sessions starting after the file is closed. So when you are working with the file, at that time the contents will not get updated. One and only if you close the file, the contents will start writing, and that is the specialty of using an AFS file system. Now let us see how the files have been protected. So files have been protected in many ways. That is, you need to have a owner or a creator. So he has every right to state whether a file can be given a read-only access, whether a file could be given a write access, whether a file could be given a full access control. So everything depends on the user, depends on the owner or the creator of the file system. So he can decide what can be done and who can do all these things. So what are the accesses possible as? We have a read access, write access, execute access, append access, delete access and list access. So these are the access that are possible in a file system. Then let us now see how these accesses are being working under a Windows XP environment. In Windows XP, I suppose when you have a chance to work with Windows XP operating system, when you right click the My Computer icon that is available in the desktop, and when you could find a Properties tab. When you click the Properties, you could find a screen similarly of this sort. Here, when you click the Properties, you will be having General, Security and Summary. Under Security, supposing if you have logged in under a guest login, you have, these are the permissions for a guest. Allow and deny. Full control, it's denied. Modify is denied. Read and execute is denied. Read is denied. Write is denied. Special, so all these things have been denied. So which means that the guest does not have any sort of access to access this particular file. So this is a practical example that can be seen under a Windows XP. Now let us summarize of whatever things that we have seen in today's lecture. We have seen about the disk structure as well as the way in which the files are organized in a directory. And then we have learnt about how files are shared. We have discussed about how the files have been protected. Now let us see what are the possible questions that could arise from this today's lecture. So question number 1, how are files organized in the directories? What is file sharing? How are files shared with respect to multiple users? Where are Andrew file system used? How are files protected? So these are the questions that are possible from this lecture. With this, we come to an end of this lecture. We will see more topics in our forthcoming lectures. Thank you.